Still like that intro.
Yeah, I do too.
So here we are. What's today? Thursday, June 13th. Um, yeah, I guess first off, for anyone that's tuning in has never seen this before, um, Mike and I are working on a book together called Due Diligence. That's how we met. But we always end up talking about all sorts of things like human design, trauma, uh, attention, ADHD, neurodivergence. But I think one common interest that we both have is comedy. You're an actual stand-up comedian, practicing and performing, and I've got this interest in it. I still haven't actually tried it, but I feel like I'm building up the courage, momentum to give it a go. But as I've said, I'm always just interested in workshopping material for presentations that I'm doing for other things too. So it's always good to have a couple of, one-liners to disarm the room with comedy. So to me, it's all a win. Um, so how you doing today?
I'm doing all right. I'm doing all right. Yeah, dropped a kid off at zoo camp and did a couple fun errands with the other one. At the zoo gift shop, I found a fidget for $1.99 that I
Okay.
had to buy for myself. So
I remember those. Is that I've seen those before.
okay, it like snaps in all sorts of different ways and stuff. It's like little wood blocks on an elastic string.
Cool. So what's zoo camp?
So like 3 hours a day, they go to the local zoo. We have a small zoo here, and get to meet some of the animals, learn about them, walk around, do like they're not quite junior zookeepers, so they're not like taking care of some of the animals, but I think they get to do things like scrub down the tortoises, like very basic stuff.
Hmm?
Um, yeah, there's like a not a cockatoo, it's a little bit bigger than that, but one that named Henry that my oldest especially likes. So he's always looking out for Henry every day.
There's jokes in just that. Like I didn't know would wipe down a tortoise. And like, do the tortoises want to be wiped down? I mean, they don't have someone wiping them down in the ocean. So like, they're just basically getting assaulted by people going, "You're not clean enough."
I guess so. They don't have a big. The space isn't that big that they roam around in. But these things are massive. I mean, just massive.
Hmm. And how? So they go like 5 days a week for a week, kind of thing, or
Just 1 week. Yep. About 5 days a week. Yeah, 3 hours at a time for 1 week. And a kid. We've had issues each year. Not with the zoo, but with another kid. There was a kid that. So my son has long hair, nice long hair, and a kid told him to leave the bathroom because he looked like a girl. So
oh,
we had to talk. We had to have a talk with the director and just let them know what's going on, not be upset about it. There's nothing they can do to prevent that, but yeah,
strange that's still going on, and at that age level, right? Like at
yeah,
that point, that's on the parents. That's someone taught that kid that, right? So,
right. And if you can't tell the difference, like he's a
well,
boy. Good luck identifying the animals in the zoo, I guess.
there's so many washrooms here that are just all gendered at this point.
And it should be.
So that's my wife's ring. Speaking of my wife and the zoo thing, just a segue. One of the very first dates we went on in Victoria, it's called the Beacon Hill Petting Zoo, and so they've got
Ooh,
goats and rabbits and peacocks and like a very small outdoor zoo.
okay.
And but my mother has suggested we go, and so this is like 1993, and I'm there with my new girlfriend and at the house. My mom's like, "Well, why don't you go to go out somewhere?" And she said, "Why don't you go to the petting zoo for animals?" And she did the double quotes, and that has stuck with me. Anytime we suggest people go to the zoo, or always like remind them for animals. The animals.
Did she think that would be misconstrued somehow? Like,
My mom is funny that way. There's like she can make. I, I, I mean,
was
she
she
just
trying
knows.
to make a joke there?
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. It was like I know what you're up to, or probably up to. Yeah. So so for ever since. Anytime we tourists in town, they ask like, "Oh, you go to the petting zoo for animal." Uh, so, right before we got started, we were talking about like what we wanted to talk about today, and there's all sorts of things like and actually when we ended last time, we didn't it didn't catch the stream. We were talking about like I definitely want to work on material for like I'm pretty good at being high, like and actually like leveraging it, right? So it's definitely an area or a direction I could see going because it's been very informing for me. Like I'm able to ride that surfboard and now use it in such a way that um, yeah, it's just powerful. I am good at being high, but you were talking about maybe how do we leverage trauma or how do we bring light with trauma or how can personal traumas um, be used to create comedy, be the basis of comedy because it'll end up being something that someone can relate to as
Yeah.
well, right? And being relatable is important.
Yeah. Do you mind start? Can we play around with the I'm good at being high real quick first?
Sure. Well, you got something?
Maybe just more questions than anything to really work off of. But what do you think the average person would think in their head when someone says I'm good at being high? What do you think their interpretation of that is?
Well, almost anyone that I talk to about plant medicine now, because it often comes up. Um, if I start talking about edibles or yeah, unless I'm talking about smoking weed, which I don't like smoking. It's never been something I've enjoyed. So I'm always an edible or full cannabis plant within the full spectrum. Um, it's almost always answered by them as being, "Oh, I did that once. It was awful. I'll never do it again." And it really is because they had an experience that really touched their whole body. Like they had some sort of funky vision. Mary Jane decided that that was the occasion that she was going to teach them something. Like there's so many things about that. So I think others would hear me say I'm good at being high and think that I'm good at hiding it, maybe, or
Okay.
like you can't tell, and I can tell you that people can't tell when because I have my stack every day. I mix and play with my stack all the time, so even I don't know how I'm gonna like where I'm gonna be amplified, if that makes sense. Like there's certain tells. If I'm on mushrooms, my right ear rings. If I'm taking THC and it's indica, then I'm definitely quiet, mopey. Like indica is in the couch, right? And so I'm always
Okay.
careful. So I know that my energy around people will be different, but I have played with just about every aspect of it. Like, do my eyes look different, before and after? I always heard that like people can tell because your eyes are bloodshot. Well, mine aren't bloodshot because I'm not carrying stress. I'm not, so you can't tell from the eyes. Um, but also, it's my tool for being at the same speed as everybody else because I am my brain, my neurodivergence, my ADHD, my all my things are so fast and ultimately overwhelming or extra for other people that for me it is like an SSRI. It kind of dials me down to the speed of others, but because it's a plant, because I know it's natural, because it's also creating connectivity with me with trees and the ground, and it makes the colors brighter. Yeah, I'm just so comfortable with it that it really is just makes me extra intuitive. It keeps me like really really grounded.
Right.
Um,
There,
yeah.
yeah, there's so many other questions that have come out of this for me.
Okay.
Like, for example, what's bad at being high? What are the positives of being good at it, being able to hide it? What are the negatives? What if you wanted people to know without saying it? So how would you signal that you are? Since you don't have bloodshot eyes, since
Yeah,
you aren't doing anything to showcase it.
I think it's situational. Like for example, when I play pickleball, I'm playing in a room where there's 25 other people and people are shifting around. And pickleball is this fun sport, but it's growing so fast, and so many people are switching from other sports that it's kind of confusing. Like people on the court can be various degrees of skill, but also various degrees of competitiveness. Some people are there because pickleball doesn't hurt their knees or they're
Yeah,
older, but other people are like transitioning from tennis and realizing that they're really good at pickleball and they are triumphant, and so their egos are through the roof. So I find that like being on the same court with these people, those energies can be really overwhelming, and actually switching from person to person. So the I well, yeah. So where I was going with that is some people get really ticked off if you don't know what the score is. Pickleball has a very particular scoring system, and it's taught as part of the game. Like you're actually when you say the score, it's 1-3-1, which means your score is one, or sorry, my score is one, your score is three, but I'm server number one, and that's how people keep track
that's
of
great.
serving, right? So it's always vocalized. Well, some people take that really serious and like are really concerned that not everyone else is keeping track. Well, when you're a little bit high, at least when I am, the only thing I lose is memory. I just have a memory of a goldfish. I'm in the moment. I'm playing pickleball. I'm having a blast. Sometimes I'm so off on the score. Like I'll be like 8-1, and they'll be like, no, it's 4-1. I have no idea, right? And I don't care. So I've learned. At first it was like uncomfortable because I was like I'm enjoying myself. The energetics are right. I can't remember the score. So all I did is told my partner the truth. I just said, you know what? I had some CBD earlier and amplified THC I had in the morning because it does. So I kind of just use that as an excuse. Like, I didn't come here to be high, but, I can feel it. My mind's like a goldfish. Could you keep track of score for us? And I thought I was expecting backlash, like, but instead I always get this little smile, like, good for you, you're having fun. And it doesn't matter who the person is, whether they're young or old, they're just curious. And it usually almost always leads to, what are you taking after the match? And how are you taking it? But by just being honest in the moment and dealing with that slight bit of potential for projection onto me, like, oh, you're high, or, because some people view being high as being drunk. I think they're very different things, to be honest.
Yeah. I do
Because
too.
in my mind, high is I am relaxed, I'm emotionally stable, and I'm having a good time, and that's it. So, but I had to like experiment with that because I was uncomfortable at first, even admitting that I was, um, or what
Okay.
people might think or project onto me. But I'm well past that now. It's more just now it's like checking on how will this person receive it. I might change the messaging how I deliver it. But
Okay.
yeah, so that's a long-winded answer for it. But it's I find that even making it conversational leads to people asking questions because pretty much everybody is curious.
Oh yeah.
So
Yeah. Yeah, it'd be interesting, like a tournament or a league where it's like plant-based medicine pickleball.
absolutely, I actually because I was getting pretty good at pickleball, and I was like, oh, what if I got better? But I'm using plant medicine to as part of my tools. If I went to a competition, are they going to do urine testing? And would I not be able to, you know what I mean? Like I'll lose my tool because it's not like tournaments do testing for SSRIs, but technically that's changing someone's behavior too, right? So,
True.
if I do think that if we're going to start testing for drugs, we should be testing for all drugs.
Yeah,
Maybe,
I don't think they would in that.
yeah.
For some reason, that makes me think about. So here, do they? Is there a lot of competitive like sport fishing in Canada? I would imagine there has to be some, right?
I'm sure. None around me that I can think of, but it might be there.
Okay. There was a group of guys that they had weights put in fish and they would plant the fish out like in a trap. And then when the tournament would start, they'd go and get their fish and they would weigh extra. And in one tournament, they cut open the fish to find the weights. And this guy with like a country drawl says, "We got weights and fish." And they try to like go attack the guys. It was crazy. They called the cops. They got like arrested for fraud, basically. It was a huge deal.
So
With
A,
this,
how horrible to put weights in fish that are still alive. Like A,
yeah.
just what a dick move. Like
And,
just
and
unkind.
other people have like traps set out somewhere in the course where they know that's where their fish are. They go and get these huge fish. It's like, oh, it's Frank again. Like he's helped us win 4 different tournaments. Like here he is, you know.
Oh man. Yeah. So it's animal cruelty. It's
Yeah.
just cheating.
Yeah.
The fraud thing is a bit of a stretch. That seems like an overreaction. Like how much what was the prize value for these things?
The tournament, I think first place was like 5 or 10 grand. I mean, it was decent
Okay.
money. It was
Yeah. So that's where people give a shit. It's not,
yeah,
you're not winning a little ribbon or something.
right,
Okay, well
right.
then that's fraud.
Yeah.
Maybe light, really weird, obscure, and animal cruelty fraud, but yeah.
And then a couple of things you said. It's funny because you had me like almost create a joke and then gave me a tag, well, a callback later. So you said you were talking about plant-based medicine and you said something like the full spectrum. And now when we think of the word spectrum, we associate with autism. So
Mm.
you saying, so me thinking in the moment, like if you were delivering that, like the full spectrum, well, I don't mean that spectrum. Well, maybe like if you're looking at yourself honestly in the moment and you're saying, well, I might be. And then you said, I'm transitioning from tennis. And then I thought, well, not that type of transitioning. Well, maybe. Just those two were very, I just made me giggle inside.
That's funny. So like yeah, like a joke within a joke where you just kind of like throw them off for a second and make them think about the
Right.
word you
And
chose.
the way where you kept just using words that could be interpreted a different way, kind of like Tobias. I mean, we've talked about, Arrested Development so much, but we're, yeah, using words that could apply to something else.
Yeah, complete side tangent, but I'm in this human design space, and we talk about astrology, and so people always like say Uranus instead of Uranus, and I always giggle because I know they're just not saying Uranus, and but like urine us, like it's not really an improvement either, right? So like if you're gonna like dance around trying to play with phonetics and stuff to not get a titter out of people, you're gonna have to do better than that. So
So there's so much there too. Like just talking about how it makes people uncomfortable and then like urine us. So now we've changed it from an asshole to a golden shower.
hmm yeah, yeah. Which way do you want to take your planet?
Urine
The
us.
back or the front?
So which one's worse? Would you rather see,
Yeah.
butthole or get peed on? I'd take the butthole, I guess.
You take the which?
The butthole.
Is that your preference?
Saying that, like if you're talking about seeing something, I don't want to get peed on. I mean, that's not my kind of
Yeah, no,
that's not my kind of enjoyment. I
no.
mean, maybe under the right circumstances, but see,
Uh,
this conversation is why it's not streaming on LinkedIn right now.
that's right. Well, yeah, but these are conversations that people have. These are also thoughts that people have.
Well,
So
that's true.
yeah, I can't remember. I met a guy. I don't think it was him, but he told me that this guy's friend would have showers with women and then
Okay.
pee on their leg without them knowing. Like they would wait, because so that's how he'd get away with it. He wouldn't actually tell her. He would just wait until the water was like landing on her leg and then just aim. So
Did he get some kind of enjoyment? Was it
I have no idea. I don't even know why they decided to share that bit of information with me. People share all sorts of things with me all the time, and that was one that I was just like, "Oh, okay, noted. Thank you."
your secret? Not noted. I won't take a shower with you.
Someone I know just through Facebook, she said yesterday she was in her car or she was out, and a guy came up to her and said, "Like, you're so beautiful. Is it okay if I ask you a question?" So she said,
Oh,
"Yeah." And he said, "Could I buy your socks from you for $200?" And so she's telling this story, and she's just thought it was so funny. And I don't think she's familiar with OnlyFans and like where people are paying for pictures of people's feet and all that kind of stuff, which is a
in
whole
jars of somebody's fart.
jars of someone's fart. Yeah,
Did you not know this was a thing?
I mean, it doesn't surprise me that
Oh,
everything's
dude,
a
there
thing.
was this whole thing. So I'll finish. You go ahead first, and then I'll bring this back up.
Well, just part of me wanted to ask her, like, so she gave him the socks and took the $200, and she thought it was funny, and I think she was flattered that he thought she was beautiful, and she is. But in my mind, I was like, you know what he's going to do with those socks, right? Like he's not putting them in a frame on the wall. So
No, and isn't that, I mean, what's the line from that to stalking or overall obsession? It's probably not that far.
well, and I was thinking about it, and I'm big into energetics these days. Like you can carry someone's energy with you as they walk away, right? Like and mentally, or just like take their vibe. But he's like quite literally taking her vibe with him physically, and so I was just like, ugh, ugh. But
And socks they'll have your DNA on it too, if you want to think of it like that.
oh yeah, well, I don't want to scare her,
No,
but yeah, but like the only thing I was thinking of is if he was willing to pay 200, ask for five and you got a deal, right? Because at that point it's already so ludicrous
yeah,
uh, that you might as well really cash in. So
$200. That is
yeah.
crazy. Um, okay, so farts in jars. I I'd have to look up. I'd have to look up the specifics. As I remember the story, she was getting a lot of money, so much so that this was her business. Now she was a beautiful young woman getting paid to fart in jars and send them. I'm thinking upwards of 500. I think it might have been like 1,000 or $2,000 for a jar. But so because it was her business, she was eating specific foods that would make you do that more. And it got to a point where she had to go to the hospital because she couldn't stop. Like her system was so ravaged by the food, her diet, so she could push out so much gas that she had to like stop.
uh, I have an even worse story similar to that. I just don't know if I should share it. But
Don't then.
okay, remind me later.
Okay.
It's that times five.
Okay.
Yeah. Uh, interesting. There was I was using Twitch right at the start of COVID because we were streaming my band's live band music bingo show. It was like a really easy way to stream, and so I
Okay.
ended up being on Twitch once a week and would get other suggestions. And there was a woman on there, and I want to say her name was Amorosa, but I don't think that's what it was. But she was attractive, and she was doing the ASMR stuff, like where you
Oh,
scratch and stuff. That was one of her things. But the other thing she did she'd have a little kid's blow up swimming pool in her living room filled with water. She would sit in it with a bikini on, and then she would just sit and talk to the camera. And if people gave money because you could pay send tips in it, she
okay.
would write their name on her arm. And that so this is how people would like they pay $25, she'd write their name on their arm, and I guess that made the person on the other end feel like they had a connection with it, right? So already and I'm like months later I saw her in the news because she was doing so well at it that I think she was making like $1 million like a year or something doing this, and but she was being shut down probably because people's spouses were like it was probably never mind it probably somehow being against Twitch guidelines. It was more just I think it was disruptive to people's other people. But what's even better is some dude started doing like a tribute to her. So big hairy guy with like I think he had a beard and everything. And he would whatever her performance was from the day before, he would do it the next day. So he'd sit in a pool in his apartment wearing the same kind of bikini that she was wearing, and then just like reproduce her show. And people were tipping him for. And I'm like, why am I busy fixing people's computers? If all I have to do is come up with something really, really asinine, there's going to be someone out there apparently that wants to consume some of that shit. So,
It's a crazy world, man.
um, hmm. Well, there's a pause. Okay, we're done with that one. Do you want to go into the trauma thing, or did you have more
Sure,
questions about
sure.
my stuff?
Um, yeah, so yeah, the topic we had talked about was just figuring out how. So traumatic experiences, when you're ready to talk about it, what how can you present that in a way that is funny? I mean, that people feel comfortable laughing at, that you can laugh at, as long as it's something you're comfortable speaking about. Because so often, like, and there's a lot of comics that will say that you don't want to usually approach those stories because the audience will be scared to laugh, or they'll feel too much empathy to feel comfortable laughing. So there's stories that I feel like are beneficial for me to share and for other comics to share and for people to hear, but you still want that to work in a comedic setting where it's not completely changing the mood or making people feel bad or sad, or still feel comfortable laughing. So that's, yeah, the topic.
Okay. Yeah. And one thing I'll say that came to mind, and it's not a story necessarily, but it was something that I was going to send you a link to earlier today, and I forgot where I saw it. It was like a YouTube video or an Instagram. I think it was just an Instagram hit. But there's this thing called laughter yoga, and basically it's a yoga class where you go to laugh. But from what I understand, in laughter yoga, it's not like someone telling jokes. It's more that you're using the laughter sounds because the body wants to laugh. So there's certain sounds like ha ha, he, ho ho, and so they'll have a whole class of that where you're doing this energetic. But part of the reason for that is that, or the comment that came, or what I got from that is if you're laughing at the trauma, then others will laugh because you're
Okay.
basically showing them that it's okay to laugh. So, like on this topic, if you're going to laugh about trauma or something and you're going to share something vulnerable or share a humility and then ultimately share the nugget of wisdom, which hopefully in this case would result in a laugh, um, you're going to have to laugh too. Like you almost, if you
Okay.
deliver trauma deadpan, that's where the audience won't respond. But if you're like laughing because can you believe it? This is it. It tickles you in a different way, right? Um, so it's just something that came up this morning. I was thinking, like, if I were to approach that stuff, when you talk about like having a style, I think that's something you don't want to incorporate if with that kind of subject matter is that you as the delivery agent need to be laughing as well, or it probably will be a very tough room. I don't think you can deliver trauma Stephen Wright style. You know,
Right, which is kind of closer to my current delivery.
mm.
Um,
So,
it's more. I've been told it works better in deadpan. I started doing it deadpan more, and I got better results.
did you? Hmm,
Yeah.
that's interesting. Have you tried experimenting with both? Because maybe at the time your material was just better or funnier, and maybe you'd get more results. Or like, could you do an experiment and do a little of each and see what lands?
Possibly. Right now, I kind of like. I'm trying to be a little bit looser. I don't, because I don't have, the Stephen Wright one-liners and stuff where everything can be deadpan. It's just certain jokes are better deadpan.
Hmm. Hmm. Did you want to explore the one you were talking about, like your one of your traumas?
Sure. So one, and the only joke that I have created around it that I've tried out before just involves like the concept of it. So robbed at gunpoint while working at a bank. And so one of the jokes that I had, I can't even remember if it worked. I don't think I even did anything else around it, but was I was once held at gunpoint. I don't snuggle willingly. Just a play on words as far as seeing it didn't even work on you. So but the thought of being held at gunpoint because I don't snuggle willingly was
Oh,
funny to
held.
me.
The keyword was held. I
Yes.
just
And so
okay.
I tried to hold that word a little bit longer. But yeah, it doesn't, people think of the phrase rather than the specific words. So that's a hard joke to get across. But that's like the only thing that I really written that's worked. I try to write out the full story before, work little things because there's all these there's little things within the story that I feel like would be funny.
Mm-hmm.
So for example, the guy took out wadded from his pocket, wadded up like Walmart grocery bags, the plastic grocery bags, and threw them at me. They hit the floor. And if you know anything about like hot plastic or warm plastic that's wadded up, it is not easy. Like, what am I supposed to do? They're in the moment, shake it like this. Well, a guy says, hurry up, and has a gun to my head. Like, so I'm trying to shove the money, and literally a whole stack of bills went on the floor and just like came open and went all over. Another thing, I mean, there's so much here, but there was a guy, a frequent customer who I did not care for afterwards, came up to me and was like, you know what? I would have done something about it, but he had the gun right to your head. So I just couldn't. It's like, okay. And the next day, well, so I went home for Christmas. It was 23rd, so right before Christmas. And this is 2008. And I went to church. My parents forced me to go to church for like the day before Christmas, the big like, Christmas Eve show. And so I told them, just don't tell anybody. I don't want anybody to know. I don't want anybody to treat me weird or anything. And my dad's in the choir. There's another guy in the choir. So after I'm talking, we're in a group. I'm talking to somebody. I feel something in the back, in my back. A fellow choir member says, give me all your money, and sticks his fingers in my back. This is the day before it happened. And somebody thought that would be a good idea to do that. So obviously my dad told him, which I told him not to. And then this idiot thought that would be funny.
Sorry, this guy said, give me all your money, stuck his fingers into your back before the robbery?
No, the day after.
The day after, right. Okay. I
So the day after I went home, I was at church, which ideally would be a safe place. The day after getting robbed at gunpoint and fearing that my life was going to end. And he thought that would be funny.
Yeah, I mean, what an idiot. Honestly. I mean, what an insensitive, unkind, and ignorant thing to do. Yeah, that sucked, buddy. And you know that whoever the person was that said, "Oh, I would have done something with the gun," was at your head.
Right.
They probably wouldn't have. They felt some sort
he wouldn't have.
not reacting, right?
He wouldn't have.
So, yeah, like it's what do you do in that situation unless you're trained? Because
Right.
you need to basically get your blood pressure down to a point where you're like, situationally aware.
And you don't want anybody to do something. You give them what they're asking for and you get them out as soon as possible. That's what we're trained to do. That's what you're supposed to do. Still extremely intense. But yeah. So, and there's many other elements to the story. I guess it turned out to be a fake gun, at least from the way they presented it. Like, so I worked with the FBI, like had to give interviews and stuff. They paid for counseling and a lot of interesting stuff around it. He was eventually caught. So he robbed maybe 4 or 5 banks successfully. And then he tried to rob a gas station. And so I mentioned the training that I received when working at the bank, which is to just give them what they want, get them out of there. They don't give that same training at all gas stations. So the person fought with him and he got away, but left behind was his cell phone. And he was done. Like, they had everything they needed at that point. So there's certain things that other aspects of that specific instance. What's almost crazier is, and I don't know how to use this as part of making it funny, it's just wild, so there's also this other stuff that happened in prison, like with him. But anyways, fast forward, I'm out of town. I no longer live there. This is Peoria, Illinois. About almost 7 years later to the day, the same guy robs the same big branch. Except this time, he doesn't even have a mask on. There's somebody else with him. And 2 of the people that were with me the day that I got robbed, like, contacted me that night and were like, you're never going to believe what happened. Like, they recognized him, and I mean the cameras, everything, they could tell instantly who it was. He represented himself in court through the whole court case, and like it was just a fiasco. Um, and he says people forced him to do it, which I almost believe, because why else would you go? He had a cigar in his mouth and no mask the second time, and robbed the same bank branch. I mean, that's just, I don't know if it's bold or cry for help or what it is, but just wild.
But not a maybe a cry for help, but he wanted to be caught. Maybe life was actually easier being, you get your meals a day, you get your fitness regime, you get quiet time. Like I think, there's been times where I'm thinking like, yeah, prison sounds appealing. Instead of paying bills, just do some light fraud and progressive development, light treason, and
Right.
all of a sudden I just get to meditate and eat and work out in a low security prison. Sounds better than the bullshit I have to deal with working with government here and consulting. So
Yeah.
that'd be trending up. Um, hmm. So how come you know so much about this guy afterwards? Like, I guess you always want, like, was it needing to track where he was, or
No,
because
curiosity. It's
yeah,
something that like not was always on my mind, but I had nightmares about it after. I had these weird body, like out of body experiences where I was in this weird mental state, um, like thinking about it, and then it felt like I was like looking down on myself, like so. Yeah, I mean, I don't know if I had like a. I think just once in a long while I would Google it just to see where the case was at. Um, he ended up doing a plea deal, so I didn't have to show up in court. Um, but I did like get like letters from the state's attorney, and like it said when he was you know when he was caught and all that kind of stuff. Um, but yeah, I would just like Google like once or twice a year or something just to see if there was anything about it.
hmm, interesting. And it like the police told you his gun wasn't real.
They
You
didn't. They didn't want to tell me that because they know it would make me feel bad. But
make
I
you
can't
feel
remember the specific words, but I said something about like, "Oh, was it real?" Or and they're like, "Nah," or something to that effect. Where either they really legally couldn't tell me if it was real, which I don't think that's the case, or they just didn't want to tell me for sure it was fake because they knew it would make me feel bad. I'm like 95% sure it wasn't real.
yeah, but
It
you don't
looked real,
have time,
but
and nor do you take chances like that.
no, you're not like, yeah, I'm pretty sure.
Yeah, yeah, it's interesting. I mean, I don't know what I would do in that situation. It's interesting, but I feel like, and back to the plant medicine thing, it would either hyper amplify or I
Mm,
would be quite calm. There has definitely been some situations where I have been able to de escalate things because I'm the calmest person in the room. Like there's been a few
okay.
things like that, but it was never with a gun or anything to that
Yeah.
extreme, right? So it's curious. Like I'm not saying, oh, I'd reach over and it's none of that bullshit. It's not what I mean at all. But I mean, when that person on the other end, they're hurting in their own way, right? And
Right.
they're right, hurt people. So that person was, he was out to put money in his jeans, whatever problem he was trying to solve, and you were in the way.
I mean, it's
And
2 days before Christmas. Somebody got some good Christmas presents. That's for sure.
yeah, 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 it's crazy, man. And that wasn't the only time it happened to you, right? Didn't you say it was 3 times it happened to you?
I well, not at a bank. I was, yes, presented in front of the barrel of a gun 3 times at the very least. Have had other close encounters too, but as far as like a gun being pointed at me, um,
Yeah.
3 times.
So let me ask you a question because I'm curious, but like
Yeah.
in that situation, do you find yourself looking in the gun hole to see if it's a real sized hole or whether it's a squirt gun? You know what I mean? Like if the police said it wasn't a real gun, in that moment with that kind of fear, and like I gotta think, you almost black out, right? You're
Yeah,
just in survival mode.
you go into it's some weird kind of it's weird
So
for
you
sure.
don't do you even remember trying to validate the facts at the time, or you were
No,
already kind of like you were removed, right? Yeah.
Yep. No, I was not in a state where I could like see if it was real or even think about that. Like it,
Mhm.
because it felt like it was 15 minutes, and I think they said it was like 48 or 52 seconds, which does not make sense to me. I don't see how it could have been that quick. I know they told me the actual time, and I was just like, there is no way it was that quick because it felt like 15 minutes.
And that time came from them looking at video footage, right?
Yeah,
And they don't show you the video footage, I assume.
I've seen not all of the video footage. I saw because they showed me to like help jar my memory to try to see if there were like other details and stuff. But just like from the view, they never showed me the one, and there would have been one that would have showed me in the picture. They
Mm.
show the one that like tracks when the person comes in the door.
Yeah, I wonder if they do that on purpose again, just
I
to
would think so.
right. But and you know what? It probably, believe it or not, it probably was 48 seconds because time stops, and also this person wants to get the heck out of there. So
Yeah.
they're, like you dropped a bunch of money on the floor. Did they make you pick it up, or they just
I think I just scooped it up and put it in there. But
yeah?
but another thing, so I had just got there. It was holiday season, so my drawer was like as full as it could be within regulations. So he definitely picked the right cashier
Hmm.
because he just came to me. He didn't go to all the cashiers to clear them out. He just went to me.
Do you think he knew that? Like, was he that clever that he
I
somehow
don't
knew?
think so.
Hmm.
Um, I mean, there's no way for me to know that if like he knew something, if somebody told him. There's no. I mean, that's kind of wild. I don't see how that could be the case, but who knows? Um, but like so I clear out everything. I gave him everything, including the marked bills. I put those in there too because we do have a thing of marked bills. I put that in too. But then when I'm going through the other drawer, the last thing I got to were the stacks of five, and I had maybe 5 or 6 of ones. And he yelled at me and said, "Stop giving me the effing small bills! Stop giving me the small bills!" And like, because he thought I was just doing that. So I literally took out the empty bins in both things and put them up on the counter and put my hands like this, like showing him, literally, I just gave you everything that's in here.
Mm.
And that's when he left.
Hmm. So he was clear enough of mind that he was observing what you were doing.
Oh, yeah.
So he
And
was in
what bills were going in the bag, that it was going in the bag. Then nobody was pressing buttons. That was one of the first things he said. Nobody press any effing buttons.
yeah. So had either done it before or done he had probably done a bit of research, I guess. Like he
I
wasn't
think at that point he had actually done a couple already.
yeah.
I don't think we were the first one because he got away with like 4 banks and
Hmm.
then one place and then the gas station that didn't work out. It was something like that.
Interesting. Okay. So none of that so far is funny. but there is funny in there, right? So um like I guess there's a couple ways you could look at it. If you were to look at it as how have you changed since? What have you learned since? What advice would you give to other tellers? If you start answering those questions, and but with an eye to providing shortcuts to people in that situation, um, there's probably I gotta think there's jokes in there.
Yeah, well, see, I had thought that in some of the little things there could be bits that I could work into that would be funny, but if nothing is funny about it, then it's really hard to do that unless I'm like obviously you can add comical elements to the story, but you can't. I wouldn't just want to like make up huge things that then would be the funny part of the story either because it is a true story.
Yeah,
um
and is that a decision you got to make? Right? Is stick to the facts, or is it where can you take creative license with that?
and a lot of people will do it by making comparisons, right? Like if I dropped the money on the floor, then talked about like something, thinking of something else, like spreading out and trying to pick it up like a blah 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 and blah blah, like make some analogy that then is funny, and then bring some humor into the story.
Well, he's in prison, and generally, when you bend over and have to spread out,
You
so
try,
I gotta
yeah.
think there's some, he might have given you a trauma shower, but now he's getting his own golden shower. I mean, I don't know, like to go back to like, there's probably
There's a
something there.
connection there.
I mean, of course, you don't want to make light like there have been people that have been killed in bank robberies. There's been lots of people that have been traumatized by it. But at the same time, it is something that happens.
Right. This is my experience. I'm not making fun of people that have
Yeah,
been
yeah.
robbed.
No, and I'm not saying you are. It's more like
Right.
put yourself in the audience member's position. How would they? Where would they laugh along with it? And that's where I think you. I don't know if you could deliver that story deadpan. You would have to actually like laugh
Yeah.
to let the audience know that you've grown, and that happened for you, not to you. And what did
And
you get
then,
from it, right?
yeah, I'd have to figure out like what angle to present it in. Like, am I saying, "Oh, silly me," or going back to, I don't know, several episodes of this ago, talking about like how all the good comics make people feel like okay about something. So okay about being a jerk, or okay about being broke, or okay about being dumb. What would this make people feel okay about? And then how can you use that to, make it funny?
One, you said angle, but I was thinking the other way too is viewpoint. You could
Yeah.
actually approach that from the viewpoint of viewpoint of the robber, the viewpoint of the FBI, the viewpoint of the guy that for some reason felt needed to say, "Well, I would have helped you, but the gun was pointed at your head." Like, that's not a helpful thing whatsoever. And that really is just showing that he feels some shame around it, and he probably shouldn't, because unless he's trained, he could get you both killed, right, by interfering. So, right, but that human behavior, if he needed to feel better about himself for some reason, but that didn't help you feel better. Now, so far that's not funny, but you could take that and like, where else does he do that in life? Like, oh, thanks for that. Where else has he been like, oh, I would have, gotten the groceries, but I didn't want to. Because pretty much that was at the end of the day, he didn't want to help because he could be in danger. And again, nothing wrong with that, but to volunteer that in that way just tells you a lot about that person and where they were at that time, right?
Yeah,
So,
yeah. Another thing that possibly could be funny, uh, playing off of what you said, is like the vantage point of the FBI agent trying to not let it be known that the gun was fake, and just how uncomfortable that would be. Like, um,
I think I've told you this story before. Uh, I'll just say it. I won't say which city it is because I don't want to get any former friends into trouble. But let's just say in the Lower Mainland in BC, there are different city jurisdictions for police. I don't know about you guys there, but in Canada, like even in Victoria, there's like, or in Vancouver Island, there's like 9 police departments. Like, they're regionally split up. They don't share radios. Like, it's just stupid.
okay, yep,
Kind of like the whole 9/11 thing. Like, none of the fire departments actually use the same systems. They compete with each other, and that's like, people died because they're not sharing the information.
yep,
It's asinine, right? So that goes on here with the police.
okay,
Well, that also means paperwork is separated. So in the Lower Mainland, there is this thing called the Sky Train, and Sky Train is like a monorail. Think of it like the Disney,
oh yeah,
right?
okay,
Like, an above ground, above uh, train. And in this one area, there's a spot where there's jumpers. People jump and commit suicide off this one
that's
spot.
yes, okay. You've told me
Right.
that.
So I'll share it here so others can hear it. But the police basically laugh about it because what else can you do? The person's already dead. They're already in a traumatic situation. And how many times have you seen police make jokes on shows and stuff because you have to do something, right? What you're seeing
Yeah,
is so horrific laughter is the only medicine. And but yeah, in this particular place, when the police get there, they actually race to get there, so that and there's like a broom handle in the bushes, and they race to push the body, like roll it onto the other police's jurisdiction, so they don't have to do the paperwork. So like it's awful, but that happens, and I'm sure that's not the only place that happens. So
Oh, for sure.
this person has decided to end their life. I mean, they're not here anymore. So it's, is it disrespecting the body? Yeah. Um, but also with the police, they're like, you know, what do you do? Like you're dealing with this situation, and also the other police department's doing it as well. So it's really just a race for who's going to do it first. So both are lacking integrity. Both are showing disrespect for this former human who suffered. But they kind of laugh about it, right? Like,
If you really want to get back at the other ones and get a leg up in the competition, as soon as one's announced, you videotape them shoving it off, and then you post the videos saying, "See, look, this department over here, just things are unruly," and then the other one can do it because they haven't been caught on video.
yeah, yeah. Okay, so we're struggling to find too many humorous entry points, but they're
Which I
there.
think is good, even if the result is figuring out that, yeah, maybe it's not funny, unless you're like having to force too many other like elements or comparisons or things, then it's probably never going to be funny. Like maybe it's just a slightly interesting story that I can share at points, but it's not something to ever do on stage, and I'm okay with that.
Well, and or is it a point to grip people? Like you get serious for 30 seconds, and then like you capture their attention, right? I remember, I don't know if it was Bill Burr saying it, like he loves the pauses as much as he loves the laughs, because that tells him that the audience is engaged.
Yeah,
And so, like there are some people, some comedians that like say some really serious shit, and then before you know it, they've completely flipped the script, and you're almost like relieved to be leaving that other material, right? Like, who's the guy? We were talking about him quite a bit.
what just came to my mind is Mike Birbiglia. I need to
That's
watch more of his stuff. His
yeah.
whole Sleepwalk with Me and his stand up where he does talk about very serious things.
Mhm.
I need to study that. That's my example probably.
He was exactly who came to mind. The last show I saw his was a masterpiece of that, where it was like he was about being in the pool, and he had this cool backdrop where he would like sit down on this sort of set of him being like, it was kind of this visual of him being in a pool. A whole bunch was about
Yeah.
being in a pool and swimming and exercise, but it was all related to this anxiety and trauma,
Yeah.
and it got dark, and it was funny, and it was dark, and it was like quite a roller coaster. It was. I actually didn't love it at first, but I appreciated it after, just the genius of it. But at the time, I was like, "Ooh, this is a ride." So,
Yeah. And he also does a really good job of like being really quiet and drawing you in, and he does a lot of that. He's also a decent actor. He was on the show Orange is the New Black, and he did really well on that.
oh, was he okay? Yeah,
Yeah.
he played a really tiny role in some movie that, of course, I'm saying it now. I can't even think of what movie it was. But anyways, it doesn't matter.
He did, you said?
Was that?
You said he did?
Yeah, no, it was just a bit part, but he was wearing a long wig and was playing like a stoner.
Okay.
Like I don't even want to know what I'm telling you, because
Was it like Dazed and Confused or something, was it?
no, it was Pop Star. I think it was Pop Star.
Oh, okay. I've seen Popstar. That's yeah. There's
Yeah,
there's a lot of good laughs in
yeah,
that.
because
I
they
like
had
the "I'm So Humble" song is fantastic.
that whole movie is nuts. It was because they had this sort of like fake, or this TMZ group that were like, they were basically pretending to be TMZ, and they were talking about Andy Sandberg's uh, character, and Mike Wrigley was one of the guys at TMZ. But because I
Oh,
knew I
okay.
recognized him, but like I had to look at the credits, like, oh my god, that's him. So anyway, doesn't matter who. So okay, I mean, there's something there, dude. A, it happened to you, so it's already your story. It's happened
Yep.
to you 3 times in a way. So I mean, how you could spin it is, tips for avoiding being held at gunpoint. Don't work at a bank. I mean, that's a good tip. Just if you are allergic to being held at gunpoint, don't, like if you're allergic to, peanuts, don't eat peanuts. Don't. Um, so there may be like tips for not being held up.
Okay.
Um, you know, you could ask the audience questions like, has anyone actually tried sticking your finger in the gun hole? Like, does that actually work, like Porky Pig or whatever, or Bugs Bunny, like where it actually, like, can anyone speak from experience whether this helps? Like, there's
I have heard. Have you heard that people have done in like life or death situations? There have been people that jam their finger behind the trigger.
how do you jam your finger behind the trigger?
So there's the trigger,
Yeah.
and you pull the trigger, and then there's the metal circle. Yeah, you can tell I know all the parts of the gun really well. So, but somebody has to. There's space to
Yeah.
pull the trigger. So if you jammed your thumb, the person can't completely pull the trigger. So it can break your thumb, and I've heard of people doing that before.
Wow. I mean, just even the aim and the time, like they could pull the trigger by the time because you're already lunging for the person in some form, right?
Yes, I think I would guess in this scenario that it was almost like a hostage scenario where you had a different angle of the gun and you could possibly get your finger in there.
I mean, you might as well try, right? Just
Yeah.
Hail Mary kind of thing. You either get it or you don't. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's funny. I've gone down YouTube rabbit holes where I've watched several videos of like how to disarm someone, and just to be like, well, I've at least seen it. I don't have a means to practice it, but you know, but you could get like a wood gun like they did in the other guys and just do practice.
Yeah. So many of those videos like how to disarm somebody, it's never going to work. There's a lot of really funny. I think it's like on TikTok where they show the guy showing how to disarm somebody, and then they do an example of like somebody trying it out in the real world, and then they'll show them like floating in heaven. Like, it was just graphics. Like the person didn't obviously die, but it was just a funny way to do the video. Like it's probably not going to work.
Well, and I mean, we could go into the whole like everyone's carrying, and people are like, "Oh, if I was in that situation, I would have just shot them." But like the number of scenarios that I've seen,
Oh
where
yeah,
they've put people in a room and simulated the instance, and the people with the guns couldn't even get their gun out of their holster before they were toast, right? So it's
yeah,
the whole like I would have, I could have, like unless you're actually Chuck Norris and you got a bit of luck, for the most part, you know, it's more like don't be in that situation, or be sensible in that situation. I guess I don't know.
it all goes to like us having a higher view of ourselves than what's realistic, whether it's sports or intelligence or how we'd react in a tense situation. It's all like that.
Yeah, I mean it's pure observation. I think with that material for sure, you almost need to pick who the participant is that's telling the story. Like, is it
Okay.
you as the victim? Are you coming at it from the lens of the FBI, but then sprinkling in other views? Like, you'd said angle. It's like what lens,
Yeah.
you know? And then at that point, are you, yeah, I don't know. I definitely think we need more comedy like that, where um, people can learn something and be able to relate to something that's
Yeah.
traumatic. So, but yeah, I wonder if like what are the stats on being held up by a gun? Is it one in every
Mhm.
500 people? Is it?
Yeah.
I mean, when you do comedy, do you think about statistics, like how many people this joke could reach? Like, is this joke worth it, or is the likeliness that it's one person in the room will even get it? Right? Like, if something's too smart.
You definitely want to relate to your audience and have something that the majority of people could relate with. Like, yeah, you don't want to. Some comics do it intentionally, but some won't, especially more novice comedians, where they'll say something like, "Hey, anyone here been divorced?" And like nobody raises their hands. Oh, just me, huh? Like, and then it kind of kills the momentum. But I've seen some that are like, anybody ever, worn a Chewbacca costume on the Fourth of July party and shot a bottle rocket out of their butt? Oh no, just me. Like, there's some of that, but no, not yeah. I don't do like the specific statistics, but I want my stuff to be relatable. Where even if somebody hasn't gone through that experience, there's something they can find funny in it.
One, so like I guess you're how you're relating is like, have you ever been so scared that or so what were the emotions that stood out then, or what were the feelings? Like certainly fear, but was it a
Yeah,
physical fear? Was it a mental fear? Was it an emotional fear? Was it a spiritual fear? Was
I
it
think just every type of fear.
yeah. I mean, it's a serious situation. You are physically in danger. Uh, Emotionally, there's a bit of why me, or spiritually, maybe why me. Um, Mentally, you're also just trying to be like, how can I get out of this? And do I have the skills, the intuition? Like, what do you do, right? So you get in that fight, freeze, fawn. Um, yeah. So, would you say in that moment you froze, or you fawned? You didn't flee, so right
I
because
didn't. I don't know if like mentally froze. Like I just became like a robot, basically. Where I try not to overthink things and just be present in the moment. I knew instantly how serious it was, and that I needed to just, I wanted to get out of their lives, so just do what it was ever said.
so you had extreme focus is what you had at that
Oh,
point,
yeah.
right? Like, and it's something that I've been playing with a lot lately. I think I've told you, like I've had lots of experiences where my mind and body are separate. Like the dental experience I had, where I was just like, holy cow, I was so high on gas at the dentist that I swear she was in my mouth with a giant tree saw. But like I was having that kind of experience observationally. But if she asked me to turn my head to the right or did this hurt, my body was answering. And I was like, oh, isn't that interesting? I can still converse with her at a level that she was taking on, even though I was not there as far as I'm concerned. I
Okay.
was in this imaginary world. And that was a real eye opener that those two things could happen at the same time. It was shocking to me. But that sounds like, you were in such extreme and hyper focus in that moment. Nothing else mattered. You were present in the moment, in the now, right now.
I think, yeah, what you just did is like a perfect way to think of ways to work it into another bit. Is I was extremely focused, like somebody had a gun to your head, which is how I was focused when I had a gun to my head. Like something like that works really well, where it's not just trying to build all these funny things around a really traumatic story, but work in something like that. I think that's a way where it could be funny.
Well, I mean, you would say you have ADHD, right? We talk about
100%. Yes, I'm currently medicated for ADHD. So yes, 100%.
yeah. So would you not say that in that moment your ADHD was not a problem? You had focus. You're like
Correct.
so like the benefits of being held up is I realized and so that made me curious. What other ways, what other things could I point at my head that would give me
Right.
focus?
Forget Adderall. Just pay
Yeah.
somebody to stand behind you with a gun.
Yeah. Well, maybe that guy in the choir, like you could, like he gave all of a sudden, you had extreme focus and nailed the high note in the X. You could like elaborate on how all of a sudden, you were like right out of the Vienna Boys Choir and whoa. People, you could take that down a whole avenue as well.
Yeah.
Hmm.
All right. Well, I gotta head out, but this is good. Thanks for going through this with me. This is really interesting. Just talking through and seeing what could possibly be done with it.
Yeah, man, that was fun. That flew by today too. Holy cow!
It did.
Already. All right. Well, I'll do our little video thing, and until next time, buddy.
All right.
See you.
See ya.